Two, against the pseudo-self, how the state manufactures identity. So long as the laws remain such as they are today, employ some discretion. Loud opinion forces us to do so, but in privacy and silence, let us compensate ourselves for that cruel chastity we are obliged to display in public. The Marquis de Sade from Philosophy in the Bourgeois, 1795. Another pressing issue to confront is the disillusioned, disinfected, unsettled, and vervent state of contemporary political theater. While political systems diverge across the globe, men face a universal destruction that hinders their pursuits, the state's relentless exploitation upon its people. Illustrations of this include the vast web of Machiavellian traits coerced onto the people, ratifying legislature that chastised liberties and might, and demanding unwavering allegiance to caste-based hierarchy, one deliberately fashioned to plunder all remnants of individualism. Partisans are aggregages and deceivers, much like the tyrants they subscribe to. While personal gain often derives dishonesty in situations which would warrant based on rational self-interest, partisans sully themselves beyond the common man's wildest fantasies. Genuine self-interest would naturally encourage mutual aid among men for a higher turnout for prosperity, yet partisans reject this voluntary obligation wholly, prioritizing an egotistical need to climb atop higher peaks by any means afforded. This inversion leads to their ascent nor decline, transforming civilization into a mechanism that obstructs individuals from pursuing their full self-interest. The state operates unrestrained by the limitations imposed upon individuals, while its auxiliary factions struggle under these constraints, ultimately surrendering to an inescapable reality that no individual is permitted to defy. Falsehoods, propaganda, and coercion, tools wielded by the state, serve as the signatures of an unscrupulous regime, advancing its self-interest at the unique's expense. Mandates, aphorisms, and intellectual constructs are by their nature inherently opposed to individual self-interest, yet many fall victim to these fabrications when their unique is substituted with their quote-unquote pseudo-self. Immaterial constructs, law and order, theism, self-discipline, Judeo-Christian values, and so forth, are mere illusions prioritized by the pseudo-self, designed to submit the masses into docility. One ought to recognize the peril these pose to oneself. The pseudo-self, in actuality, is not oneself, but the anti-self of oneself, a manufactured identity imposed by the state. It's not born of nature's choosing, it's a conditioned state of oneself, and in terms of evolutionary importance, would be rather detrimental to adaptability and hierarchy of needs. They do not originate from individual thought, but manifest as the will of the state's collective apparatus. Consequently, the limited power an individual possesses is rendered insignificant, and in turn they unconsciously adopt these illusions, embracing even grander falsehoods, such as the notion of higher purpose and other abstract fantasies. Only when one fully comprehends that these constructs exist solely to weaken the unique, through insidious coercion, can they begin to distinguish themselves from the hive mind of the state. The division of humanity into rigid classes is fundamentally antagonistic to individual autonomy, which hold greater purpose than the state and its institutions. Yet tragically, the unique is repressed by a societal peer pressure that emphasizes status in spite of its material lack thereof in hierarchical classification. It is against one's self-interest to embrace a system that directly opposes personal autonomy. Yet, the system systematically strips individuals of their power and reallocates it to the state, where personal significance holds no value beyond serving the ruling structure. Ultimately, a class-based civilization exists only to reinforce the authority of the state. Thus, those who seek true autonomy must resist the very framework that feeds the pseudo-self with such psychosis. If one naively believes the world can simultaneously uphold hierarchies of classes, constant power struggles, wishfully believing they're a free man, they're blissfully incognizant to how deeply victimized they are at the pseudo-self's behest, in which the state planted within themselves to make for weaker, more easily influenced subjects. Building upon these points regarding our bureaucratic environment, one inevitable repercussion arises as a direct consequence of capitalism: coercive totalitarianism, which prioritizes the state's self-interest over that of the unique. This doctrine is masked behind constructs such as aphorisms, mandates, and other illusions fabricated and enforced by the state, rather than originating from the unique. Through the oppressive imposition of these constructs, individuals are reduced to mere serfs under its authority, their power stifled in favor of submission to the state's whims. Such submission serves no purpose and must be opposed, even through violence, if necessary. To begin with, individuals who openly criticize the state, such as anti-fascists, are met with relentless denunciation from both the state and those who unquestionably align with this agenda, colloquially referred to as bootlickers. The reasoning behind this is simple. Anti-fascists pose a direct threat to the state's interests. In response, the state seeks to discredit these dissenting voices by labeling them as criminals, tarnishing their legitimacy and thereby explaining the widespread aversion toward such individuals. In effect, the state justifies its own actions as constitutional while branding actions of dissenting individuals as unlawful. Moreover, these institutions not only devalue the unique, actively suppress them, while granting the state greater freedom. As a result, the state consolidates its power over the unique, transforming them into mere servants of its agenda. For instance, a person is expected to comply with laws imposed by the state, despite having no say in their creation. Should they defy the system, they are branded as criminals. For refusing to abide by the state's uncompromising edicts, they find themselves ensnared by the state's interests, forced either to abandon their own or face imprisonment and societal ostracization for the remainder of their lives. Eventually, the unique will inevitably yearn to pursue their self-interest, as this desire cannot be suppressed indefinitely. If not, they risk falling into mental despair due to the constraints forcibly placed upon them by the state. Therefore, one must break free from the societal structures imposed upon them and reclaim their individuality, rather than laboring endlessly in service to the state. Number 3. The echo chamber phenomenon. Rise in online extremism. In recent times, there has been an unsettling rise in the prominence of online extremism, particularly within the spheres of right nationalism and involuntary celibacy. One disturbing thread that weaves these radical ideologies together is the insidious tactics they employ to perpetuate their coercive beliefs. Central to this strategy is the creation of echo chambers, enclosed spaces where individuals, isolated from opposing viewpoints, rally together in their shared discontent and extremist perspectives. These chambers offer not just solitary, but a dangerous reinforcement of radical views that can drive individuals already teetering on the edge of mental instability to commit acts of violence against those they deem quote-unquote enemies. The targets of such aggression, almost always marginalized groups, bear the brunt of this irrational fury, even though they are utterly undeserving of such hostility. Equally troubling is the role the media plays in fueling this fire. Instead of confronting the issue head-on and attempting to extinguish the flames of extremism, the media often exacerbates the situation. In its rush to cover and sensationalize violence, it inadvertently invites imitation by others who are equally unmoored from reality. The media, like a profit-driven behemoth, prioritizes spectacle over substance, feeding the cycle of violence rather than breaking it. In this environment, the state's role as an authority figure seems just and ineffectual, inescapable of addressing the moral crisis at hand. This leaves us, as individuals, with the responsibility to take matters into our own hands. Disregarding the hollow degrees of the state and chartering our own course guided by principle, for as long as we follow the status quo, these forces will only continue to flourish. But let us not lose sight of what this battle truly entails. As an ardent individualist, I cannot, in good conscience, advocate for resorting to the same tactics as the fascists of the state. To do so would be to lower ourselves to their level, diminishing our integrity and distorting our cause. Instead, our fight must be grounded in truth. The truth that exposes the lies perpetuated by both the state and these radical factions. We must resist the temptation to manipulate or deceive, for such tactics will only dilute our message and undermine our legitimacy. Humanity's greatest weakness lies in its ability to deceive, to twist the facts for personal gain, but if we must succumb to the same moral decay, we will forfeit the very principles we seek to defend. The only weapon that remains in our arsenal is truth. Though we are outmatched in terms of resources and power, the clarity and righteousness of a cause can resonate far beyond the material might of the state. If we hold fast to this truth, unyielding, unswerving, we may yet turn the tide. Let it be this truth that propels us forward, not the coercive lies that threaten to drown out the voice of reason. Number 4. A cab. All cops are bastards. All cops are bastards. All cops are bastards. The enforcers of the state, pigs in their uniform, badges, and guns, exist solely to uphold the interests of the system. They are not here to serve the common man and woman, but to maintain the hierarchies that oppress and subjugate us. Their role is not to protect, but to enforce. They represent the face of the state's authority, a faceless machine of coercion, indifferent to the suffering of those they oppress. They eagerly enforce laws that are antithetical to individuality. And when you dare challenge these rules in pursuit of your own freedom, you are branded a criminal, an enemy of the state. Consider, for a moment, the undeniable truth of their actions. They regularly incarcerate the innocent, unjustly imprison the mentally ill, and perpetuate the systematic degradation of marginalized groups. They protect the powerful while imprisoning the weak. They seize those who stand for justice, our comrades in anti-fascism, while permitting those who represent the fascist agenda to roam freely, unchecked. Their corruption, their unrelenting cruelty is reason enough for us to resist. But beyond this, they are masters of deception. They ensnare individuals into self-incrimination, making a mockery of justice while perpetuating the state's control. How can we trust such an institution, one built on lies, manipulation, and a constant subjugation of the unique? Only the sycophant, the servile tool of the state, would extend any faith to these agents of oppression. And let us not forget the state itself, the very apparatus that binds us in chains and locks us in the cages of its construction. The police are its agents of fear and submission, using terror to control and divide. It is they who have cultivated the system of surveillance, violence, and inequality that we live under. They serve the state's interests that are entirely opposed to the sovereignty of the unique. When you place your faith in them, you surrender yourself to a system that thrives on your subjugation. But what is your choice then? Do you submit to these vile institutions, or do you reclaim your autonomy? Do you keep the chains of the state intact, or do you break them and stand unshackled in your full, uncompromised humanity? It is time. No, it is past time to resist. Do not wait for the state to soften, for it will not. The police will never protect you. Their existence is predicated on keeping you enslaved and keeping you afraid. Oppose them, dismantle their ranks, and let them feel the fear that they have inflicted upon us for so long. Let them tremble, for it is our resolve and our unity that will strike the greatest fear in the heart of the oppressor. If imprisonment is the price of standing firm in our beliefs, then so be it. Let it serve as the final, undeniable proof of the state's contempt for the unique, for the freedom, for truth. We will not bend, we will not bow. Their insignia, whether it be badge or uniform, means nothing. In my eyes and officers, nothing but refuse. A tool of their oppressor, no different than the shackles they impose. Resist with every ounce of your being. Stand tall, stand united, and do not falter. For when the state falls, so too will the institution of the police, and in their place, the power of the unique shall rise unbound, unstoppable, free.